Now, if I asked you to give me two teams on the F1 grid that are the most frustrating, hair pulling out, and just bewildering at times, your first answer will probably be Ferrari. And partially you might be right, they've got enormous budgets, they've got star drivers, they're also the most iconic team in the world, but they also seem to be allergic to competence. But you know what? At least there's some podiums, some race wins every now and again. So if you are a Tifosi or Ferrari fan, think yourself lucky. Because you could, of course, be a supporter of Williams. Now, on paper, Williams is one of the most successful and most important teams in Formula One history. 7 Drivers' Championships, 9 Constructors' Championships, and 114 race wins. But if you compare that to the last 20 years, no Drivers' Championships, no Constructors' Championships, and of course, 1 race win. Let's just take a second to appreciate Pastor Maldonado. And okay, we're done. So overall, what I'm trying to say is it does make Ferrari's position look a bit like a beautiful walk on a sandy beach. Now, I love this team more than any other, and it does have a special place. Because of course, when you consider the team's origins, the development over the years, the drivers, the successes, and also the failures, it all adds up to something that you want to be a part of. But my God, is it the ultimate lesson in patience. Now, on the one hand, it can be very rewarding and give you a unique experience to watching Formula One, because you know that you're building towards something and believing that Williams will get there again is part of it. Basically, what I'm kind of trying to say is that it's character building. It's kind of like that quote from the film Men in Black.
Hey, is it worth it?
Oh yeah, it's worth it. If you're strong enough.
It is worth being a Williams fan, but only if you're strong enough. Now, although the team was in decline since 2016 and arguably in the grand scheme of things since 1997, 2025 though has seen an upswing in terms of performance and points scored. However though, in typical Williams fashion, there are still some creases that need to be ironed out. There is still of course a very inconsistent and temperamental car, and then you've got Carlos Sainz who's still not really able to find that sweet spot yet, and then Alex Albon of course plugging away as the best he can. Now, I'm not complaining, of course. This is supposed to be a bit of WST, Williams Supporter Therapy. And if you are a Williams fan, do let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And also, if you're not a Williams fan, let me know your thoughts anyway. Now, prior to this run of bad form or even luck that we've seen in the last 3 races for both Sainz and Albon, Williams have vastly improved compared to the previous years. After all, sitting 5th in the Constructors with a nice little buffer space to RB isn't a bad position to be in considering how things have gone before. In fact, Williams have already scored more points in 2025 than 2022 to 2024 combined. And everything just feels healthier about the team. There's more sponsor logos on the car, there's no more dodgy pay drivers associated with the team anymore. And also the team is getting much more involved with the F1 community, and also much more merch seems to be available. So this shows at least there is demand as well. Would it be rude to say that Williams is getting more popular? Perhaps it's not. And also on race weekends, you can see the confidence is growing. Even from sitting on the couch, I can see that people in the team are standing taller and there's more smiles generally amongst them. A complete transformation from recent seasons where even the team's future looked uncertain. And so by now, if you're not on board, you're probably wondering, things are going pretty well this season, so what on earth are you complaining about? Well, the past 3 Grand Prix does show that as a F1 fan, you can't have it your own way all the time. There are and will always be dips, and fans of Mercedes and Red Bull have found this all out too well recently. And then there's also the reality that Williams might have built a car that can quite happily score points anywhere from 5th to 10th, but a car that is also fragile and susceptible to changing conditions such as climate and driver's mood and luck and small things like that. After all, maybe the problem is Williams haven't built a car for combat. Maybe if the engineers just realised this and bolted something to the floor, they'll rocket up to the front of the grid amongst the McLarens. In fact, that's the answer. James, just build the car for combat. It worked for Brad, it can work for Williams. Now, on another topic, it's very reassuring to see that James Vowles has extended his contract. His energy and outlook and positivity is just so palpable, and even I can sense it. when I'm watching a Grand Prix sitting on the sofa, even from the outside of the circle. So the effect it must be having on internally at Williams must be very interesting to see. And like I said, it's great to have him confirmed, and hopefully this momentum is going to continue. But in typical Williams fashion, there is another factor that is bringing things back down to earth, and that is the situation around Carlos Sainz. Now, credit to Carlos, it's been said that he has brought a ton of insight to the team that wasn't there before. He's helped lift things up and should have been the last piece of the puzzle to help put Williams at least back on the podium anyway. And also the expectation on the driver front was that he was going to blow Albon out of the water, but as you can quite clearly see, this hasn't really happened. In fact, it's been more or less completely the opposite. It's just that little sweet spot, that version of Carlos Sainz that we saw at Ferrari hasn't quite translated yet to Williams, and the weird thing is, no one really can explain why. But also a massive factor I think we have to consider is that the car has not been designed for him. He's not driving around in a Williams where his style and his habits and everything was integrated into the design of the car. And yet, despite the disappointing results and everything, credit to Carlos, he has kept surprisingly chirpy and positive when he has every right to be fuming right now. And perhaps even getting on the phone to his agent, telling him to get me out of this dump. And you know what? Behind closed doors, that could very well be the case. I'd be very surprised if conversations hadn't been had at this stage. And also considering the length of his career and how long he's got left and everything, I wouldn't blame him for doing that, to be honest. And on the other side of the garage, we have the ever faithful, ever delivering Alex Albon, who was typically so soft-spoken and non-assertive. But though some of the radio comms that we've seen this year has told a very different story. Where of course we've heard him complaining that the team aren't listening to him and they're also just ignoring his insights. It's got to be incredibly frustrating for him whatever is going on there. And also it hasn't really been something that we've heard before, but ever since Carlos Sainz has arrived, perhaps something has changed within the team. Which then also begs the question, how happy and comfortable is Albon really at Williams? Now overall, he's done a superb job this year. He scored the majority of the points, but 2026 is going to be the 5th year at the team and also the last on his current contract. So surely the conversation is going to be, what's next? And also, that's the same question that's on the lips of most Williams fans as well. Because being a Williams supporter over the last 10 years, I have to say has been the ultimate lesson in commitment, sanity, and also patience. And also a daily kick in the head reminder that just because a team has had success in the past, it gives them absolutely no right to expect this in the future. A lesson learned far too hard by Ferrari and Mercedes, and up until recently, McLaren as well. Exactly the same as Williams, McLaren followed a similar form of decline. There was poor results, sponsorless cars, a general lack of interest, almost to the point where the team was finished. But they reinvented themselves. They took stock of the situation, created a plan, and they are now reaping the results. Now the hope is, from my perspective, is that Williams are going to follow a similar blueprint, a similar plan to what McLaren have laid out. But the question is, and I'm sure the same is for most Williams fans, is, how much longer is this going to take? No, I'm not being greedy and getting annoyed at the lack of titles and championships or anything, but just a podium at this stage, is that really too much to ask for? And with the new regulation changes coming in 2026, there is every chance that this could catapult Williams up the grid towards race wins again, leapfrogging a few teams in the process. But because of everything that's gone on in the last few years, 10 years or whatever, I'm not guaranteed of anything. In fact, the rule changes could mean that Williams could fall back down the grid to 9th, 10th, 8th place or whatever. Not 11th place though, because that space is specially reserved for Cadillac. You can call it negative if you like, but I think it's more of a way of thinking that helps preserve you should the worst happen. And then as well that you're not totally shocked if it does happen. Like in the past 5 years, a whole host of Mercedes and Red Bull fans have realised that you can't win everything all the time. Some of them don't know how to compute or process this and then go completely mad on social media. But despite everything that's going on with the team right now, it is still fantastic to have this great name still on the grid, associated with one man who just wanted to go racing. Ferrari, McLaren and Williams are of course the only teams left on the grid without a name change. Back when the Williams estate sold the team, it very well could have been rebranded as something else, but the new owners still saw value in the Williams name. And so before you say, hey, why don't you go and support McLaren or Red Bull or Mercedes, it really takes the misery out of watching Formula One. Well, maybe I like the misery. So cheers for watching, guys. That was a bit of Williams supporter therapy. Hope it helped. Do all the YouTube stuff, turn on notifications, like if you enjoyed, subscribe, all that good stuff. Cheers for watching. I'm Paul, and I'll see you later. Cheers.